Good evening, everyone. Fellow journalists, editors, friends, colleagues, all those with whom I share a vocation and a journey in this industry. Thank you for asking me here, SOPA. It is such a privilege to be before you, just as I begin a new stage of my professional life, and one that gives me the opportunity again to seek out stories from across the globe. I am a little unused to a stage like this, given that most of my work is behind the microphone or in the TV studio. Sometimes, though, those worlds come together. And exactly a year ago, in the final days of the UK election, I was on a stage with the last British Prime Minister and the present one for a primetime TV debate. In the hours before, the police came to see me in my dressing room and said they wanted to talk through what would happen if there was a threat or disruption that took us off air. We would clear the stage, they told me, and we wanted to introduce you to the officer who would be removing you from the stage so that you're not alarmed when he carries you off at speed. And I thought there was something rather endearing, possibly very British, in the idea that being introduced beforehand to the man that I might next see barreling towards me would mean I wasn't alarmed. Thankfully, we never had to put that to the test. Here we are halfway through 2025, and while quiet periods are few and far between for most newsrooms, these last few months have been particularly charged. Our profession is working on an ever greater number of fronts, weighing up the immediate as well as the long-term consequences of everything from executive orders to missile strikes. It is what we chose to do, and we must embrace and move with the technology of our time as well as the news of our time. I do, however, think that this technological moment is a pivotal one, which is why I wanted to take a few minutes to reflect on the personal dimension of the AI age, the use and abuse of image and voice. I am really thinking here about the challenge it poses to trust, which is probably the key value that has underpinned my work in media over more than 25 years. I went into this profession because I trusted in the power of journalists to relay what they see, to share the new, the different, the intriguing, the questionable, the wrong. The first news story I remember hearing about was Cambodia, about 1979. My parents told me, as parents do, to eat up my food because of the famine in Cambodia. I was 6, but this word Cambodia stuck in my mind. About 10 years later, I read about Year Zero and the killing fields, and I understood why my parents were thinking about and horrified by what they heard of Cambodia, despite living thousands of miles away in the United Arab Emirates. When I became a journalist, I felt the trust placed in me from the very beginning in the junior-most roles, as my editors rightly expected clarity, accuracy, and speed. My first job was writing the text that appears on screen at the then very new Bloomberg TV. I must have been reasonably okay at it, because other opportunities followed, including my first on-camera appearance in a tiny self-operated booth in Bloomberg, London. This was the 90s, the last century, I have to admit, moving the autocue on with my hand on a dial that was only just out of shot. Later at the BBC, I felt the trust placed in me by interviewees. Would I listen properly? Would I have done enough preparation in advance? Would I ask informed questions? I have also felt the tension, the added edge, the atmosphere of peril in these encounters when they take place at high-stakes moments, such as referendums or elections. When the prize is the acquisition or the retention of power, the interviewees or their people will let you have it if they perceive you, rightly or wrongly, to have been unfair. And yet, as I say this, the interview that sticks in my mind is one with a serving British Prime Minister, which was testy. At the end of it, however, we both stood up, shook hands, thanked each other, and said, "See you next time." I'm not naming this particular Prime Minister, as I don't want to give them too much credit. And as the UK is on its 6th Prime Minister of the last 10 years, I don't think that they're identifiable. But I am aware of the privilege of that type of post-interview exchange. In so many countries, in contrast, there are firm and real consequences for journalists and others based on their words. You know this reality in Hong Kong. Many of you will have felt the sharp end of this elsewhere in the region and the world, including the United States, where a young woman was recently detained by masked immigration agents after writing an op-ed. And the wider picture for journalist safety is stark. The Committee to Protect Journalists says 2024 was the worst year since it began collecting data 3 decades ago. At least 124 journalists and media workers were killed, nearly 2/3 of them Palestinians killed by Israel. The changing tools of our trade fit into this landscape. And let me say a little here about the ways that Bloomberg is using AI. News stories on the Bloomberg terminal now have 3 bullet points at the top, distilling the information that follows, and they're labeled as Summary by Bloomberg AI. The same feature is labeled Takeaways by Bloomberg AI in stories on our website. This use of generative AI began last year, and it's continuously being refined. It saves readers and users time. It is popular and appreciated. There is editorial oversight, and it complements the journalism that follows. It cannot exist without it. Like many of you, we also have stories that have been enhanced or made possible by the use of AI and data visualization. There was one recently from New York analyzing 75,000 cars in footage from Manhattan to work out if congestion charging was deterring lower income drivers, i.e. those in less fancy cars, from coming into the city. It turned out it wasn't. Similarly, AI has been part of a mapping of tent cities within Gaza and was used to back up reporting from Singapore about ship-to-ship transfers of Iranian oil in the Strait of Malacca. These are examples of the human and artificial coming together, of moving with the times. It would be impossible to have human beings produce summaries for the thousands of Bloomberg stories published every day, and nor is it the kind of work that most of us came into this industry dreaming that we would do. As an interviewer, I have, of course, thought about how to use AI for research or indeed questions. But I don't believe that my ultimate goal of insightful, long-form conversation will be reached through ChatGPT or similar avenues. That's not to say they can't be of use. Last month, I interviewed Elon Musk. It was an experience. I did consult his own AI tool, Grok, beforehand because I was intrigued about what it might say about him. I asked, what is Elon Musk's greatest challenge right now? And Grok gave me a good answer about multiple challenges of business and government. He was still with Doge at the time. And about the challenge of scrutiny, new stakeholders and pressures. I did use that question in the interview with attribution, telling Elon Musk I had consulted Grok, and did he agree with its assessment? The interview had a big reaction, and afterwards I saw that one of Elon's many millions of followers on X also consulted Grok. Dear Grok, he wrote, what happened? And who is Mishal Husain? Grok replied, Musk was confrontational, calling Hussein an NPC, and yes, I had to look this up afterwards. Grok went on to say, evidence indicates she conducted a standard interview with tension due to Musk's actions. So I do have faith in aspects of this new world. There is, however, a part of it that sends a chill through me. Shortly after it was announced last November that I was joining Bloomberg, my mother forwarded me a video on WhatsApp. It was a version of a news report about my move. The pictures were of TV studios with a series of female anchors. If you looked closely and thought about it, you would realize they were AI generated. These women did not look like me. Their faces were pretty blank. The graphics, the straps on screen were all meaningless. The voiceover was also AI, and the script was pretty generic, banal. The words, interestingly, were not inaccurate, and there was nothing in it that you could feel outraged about it. Instead, I would describe it as creepy, an artificial world into which a real person's career had been sprinkled. A video supposedly about me, but populated by journalists conjured out of thin air. There was something empty and soulless about it. Even then, I will take that use of AI any day over what I now see regularly on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and X. These are the deepfakes of respected broadcasters, journalists, economists, including colleagues of mine, past and present, where they ask you to join their investor WhatsApp group, set up so that you can benefit from their years of experience analyzing the market, the economy, and our complex world. There are many real-world examples of people being scammed out of their entire life savings by the individuals and groups behind this trickery and crime. Often those whose image is used are the most credible, the most trusted, known to be faces and voices upon whom you rely. Of course, the scammers make their choice this way. They are not stupid. Hence, it seems the harder you have worked to secure your reputation as one of journalistic integrity, the more likely it is that your name and image will be abused in this way to inflict hardship on others. What is the answer? You're no doubt thinking. Well, of course, I'd want it to be impossible for such material to be online, but that seems an impossible wish given the continued prevalence of harmful material of many kinds online. Therefore, I think we probably, sadly, have to live with it. The idea that our faces and our reputations can be used to rob people. But on the broader landscape of what AI means for us personally and professionally, I will leave you with this. Perhaps the only lesson we can take away is to be ever more human, to put enough depth and richness of knowledge into our work, to display and to embody spirit, empathy, humor, to deploy curiosity and challenge, to have courage, to remember why we were attracted to the media in the first place, to endeavor to be one step ahead of Grok and the others. They will learn from, indeed scrape our work every second of every day. But we are still here, and we too can and will keep learning. Thank you.